A mother's desperate truth. Nina's shocking confession rocks Willow's trial. The Port Charles courthouse fell into a stunned silence as Nina Reeves suddenly rose from her seat in the gallery, her voice trembling as she announced the truth that would change everything. What began as another heated cross-examination by Assistant District Attorney Justine Turner transformed into a moment that would define the lives of everyone seated in that courtroom. With tears streaming down her face and her hands shaking, Nina made a confession that would shake the foundation of the entire case and expose the depths of a mother's desperation to protect her child. The prosecution's mounting case. The trial had been proceeding methodically, with a DA Turner systematically building her case against Willow Tate Kane. As witnesses took the stand one after another, the prosecution had been tightening the noose around the defendant. The evidence seemed damning. A gun with Willow's fingerprints, though faint and smudged, discovered in her belongings while she was staying at Elizabeth Baldwin's house. The prosecution argued that Willow, desperate and facing losing custody of her children to her estranged husband Michael, had taken matters into her own hands on that fateful night when Drew Kane was shot. Justine Turner was relentless during her cross-examination, pressing every weakness in the defense's arguments. The ADA presented cell phone records, timeline inconsistencies, and witness testimonies that all seemed to point toward Willow's guilt. Alexis Davis, Willow's defense attorney, fought back valiantly, but the pressure was mounting with each passing day of testimony. A moment of desperation. Willow sat at the defense table, her face growing paler as the prosecution continued to hammer away at her credibility. She had already been caught in multiple lies throughout the trial, changing her story, contradicting earlier statements, and struggling to explain crucial gaps in her alibi. The jury's faces grew increasingly skeptical with each revelation. Even her own mother, seated in the gallery, could see the walls closing in. Drew Kane, the victim of the attempted murder, watched from across the courtroom with a mixture of emotions, anger at Willow's deceptions, confidence in the prosecution's case, and perhaps something darker beneath the surface. He knew the truth, or at least parts of it, and his silence was deafening. Then it happened. The confession, as Turner presented a photograph of the gun with its faint fingerprints barely visible on the barrel. Something inside Nina Reeves shattered. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the marble floor. All eyes turned toward her as she gripped the gallery railing, her voice breaking as she spoke. "It was me," Nina said, her words cutting through the silence like a blade. "I fired that gun. Not Willow. Me." The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. Judge Morrison banged her gavel, demanding order as Willow's eyes widened in shock, tears immediately beginning to fall. Alexis Davis turned in her seat, her expression a mixture of surprise and dawning comprehension. Nina continued, her voice raw with emotion. "On that night, I was watching Drew. I saw him with Willow, and I saw him threatening to take her children away from her. He was telling her he would use every legal means to strip her of her maternal rights. He was going to take Wiley and Amelia and raise them as his own." I heard the desperation in her voice, and I couldn't let that happen to my daughter. A mother's lie. Through tears, Nina explained how she had panicked, how maternal instinct had overridden rational thought. "In that moment, all I could think about was protecting my daughter and her children," she said, her voice breaking with each word. "Drew was a threat to my family. He had become obsessed with Willow, and when she rejected him, he became vengeful. I was there when he made those threats. I heard everything." According to Nina's account, she had retrieved a gun, details blurred by her emotional state, and confronted Drew that evening. The confrontation turned violent. In her panic and desperation to protect Willow, she had fired the weapon. But then, in a moment of calculated desperation to protect her daughter from murder charges, she had planted the gun in Willow's belongings, hoping the evidence would be circumstantial enough to create reasonable doubt. "I never meant for Willow to be accused," Nina insisted, her voice desperate. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but everything spiraled out of control. She's my daughter. I would do anything to keep her safe. I would take her place in prison if it meant she could be free. The collapse. Willow's reaction was immediate and visceral. She stood at the defense table, stunned by her mother's admission, and then crumbled. Tears poured down her face as she processed not just the betrayal of her innocence being sacrificed, but also the terrible sacrifice Nina was making on her behalf. Alexis reached out to steady her, whispering words of reassurance that seemed hollow against the magnitude of what had just transpired. Justine Turner's expression hardened. She had built her case on solid evidence, and now that foundation had shifted, though not entirely in the defendant's favor. A mother confessing to murder to save her daughter created new complications, new questions about credibility and motivation. Sonny's doubts. In the gallery, Sonny Corinthos watched the scene unfold with careful attention. His dark eyes studied Nina's face, analyzing every gesture, every inflection. As a man who had spent decades navigating the criminal underworld, Sonny possessed an instinctive ability to detect deception. What he saw in Nina's performance troubled him. Sonny knew Nina. He had been married to her once, had witnessed her capacity for love, but also her willingness to manipulate situations to achieve her goals. As he listened to her confession, something didn't sit right. The timing, the conveniently detailed account, the dramatic gesture, it all felt orchestrated. She's lying, Sonny's expression seemed to suggest as he exchanged a knowing look with one of his associates seated nearby. He knew Nina was trying to protect Willow, but he also understood that true maternal sacrifice wouldn't look like this, so theatrical, so perfectly timed to derail the prosecution's case. Nina caught Sonny's gaze from across the courtroom and saw the skepticism etched into his features. She looked away quickly, but not before a flicker of fear crossed her face. Sonny Corinthos wasn't a man to fool easily, and his suspicion, along with the realization that others might share it, threatened to unravel her carefully constructed lie. The fallout. Judge Morrison called for order and declared a recess, but the damage was done. The trial had taken an unexpected turn that no one, except perhaps those directly involved in the conspiracy, could have predicted. Prosecutors and defense attorneys huddled with their teams, reassessing strategies. Law enforcement officers looked to each other uncertainly. Was this case solved, or had it just become infinitely more complicated? As Willow was led away by court officers, her eyes remained fixed on her mother. There was gratitude there, yes, but also confusion and pain. Nina had sacrificed her freedom, her future, everything, but at what cost? And would her sacrifice actually save her daughter, or would it only compound the tragedy? The truth about who really fired that shot on the night Drew Kane was murdered remained elusive, hidden beneath layers of lies, desperation, and maternal love twisted into something darker and more complex than anyone in that courtroom wanted to admit. Next, we will learn about the explosive situation unfolding between Portia Robinson and Curtis Ashford that has Port Charles buzzing with speculation and concern. The tangled web of secrets, paternity questions, and complicated relationships continues to deepen as Portia finds herself in a predicament that threatens to destroy what little trust remains between her and her estranged husband. Dr. Portia Robinson has built an impressive career at General Hospital, earning respect and admiration from colleagues and patients alike throughout Port Charles. Her medical expertise is beyond question, and her dedication to saving lives has made her one of the most trusted physicians on staff. When patients are wheeled into the emergency room or require delicate surgical procedures, having Dr. Robinson on the case brings comfort to worried families. Her diagnostic skills are sharp, her bedside manner is compassionate, and her commitment to the Hippocratic Oath appears unwavering. Fellow doctors regularly seek her consultation on difficult cases, and nurses appreciate her collaborative approach to patient care. In the professional sphere, Portia Robinson's reputation shines brightly without blemish. However, when the examination light shifts from her professional accomplishments to her personal life, a drastically different picture emerges. The same woman who displays impeccable judgment in the operating room has demonstrated a troubling pattern of questionable decisions when her own interests are at stake. Time and again, Portia has proven that when her professional responsibilities collide with her personal desires, she will manipulate circumstances to serve her own agenda. This duplicity has eroded trust with those closest to her, creating a reputation for deception that now overshadows her medical credentials. The stark contrast between Dr. Robinson the healer and Portia the woman has become impossible for Port Charles residents to ignore. The most devastating example of Portia's willingness to prioritize personal gain over honesty involves the secret she kept from Curtis Ashford for nearly 2 decades. For years, she allowed him to believe that Trina was Marcus Taggart's daughter, robbing Curtis of the opportunity to be present for his child's formative years. She watched Curtis from afar, knowing the truth but choosing silence. She witnessed milestones, birthdays, and achievements that Curtis should have shared but didn't even know existed. When the truth finally surfaced, the revelation shattered Curtis's world and exposed Portia's capacity for long-term deception. The pain of discovering he had a grown daughter he never knew about left Curtis reeling with anger, grief, and betrayal. Now, in a scenario that feels hauntingly familiar, history appears to be repeating itself in the most troubling way possible. Portia Robinson is pregnant, but the identity of the father remains uncertain. 2 men stand as potential fathers to this unborn child, Curtis Ashford and Dr. Isaiah Gannon. The circumstances leading to this situation speak volumes about the state of Portia's marriage and her personal judgment. While still legally married to Curtis, Portia engaged in an intimate relationship with her colleague Isaiah Gannon, creating this complicated paternity dilemma. The secret of her affair has now become public knowledge throughout the hospital, with whispers and speculation following Portia down every corridor. Curtis Ashford finds himself trapped in a nightmare that mirrors his past trauma with disturbing precision. Once again, he faces uncertainty about whether he is the biological father of Portia's child. The déjà vu is almost unbearable for him to process. While the circumstances differ in significant ways, the core elements remain painfully similar. Different decade, different man as the alternative father, but the same agonizing question hangs in the air. Is this child his, or has Portia's relationship with another man resulted in a pregnancy that will exclude him once more from fatherhood? The emotional toll of reliving this scenario is visible in every tense muscle and worried glance Curtis displays. The revelation that Portia slept with Dr. Isaiah Gannon has spread through Port Charles like wildfire, adding another layer of humiliation to Curtis's already difficult situation. Hospital staff members exchange knowing looks when Curtis visits. Friends struggle to find appropriate words of comfort. The entire town seems to be watching and waiting to see how this drama will unfold. Curtis Ashford, a man who has already endured so much pain and loss, now faces the very real possibility that history will repeat itself in the cruelest possible fashion. The weight of uncertainty presses down on him with each passing day that Portia delays the paternity test. According to the latest developments emerging from General Hospital, Curtis has decided to take direct action by confronting Portia in her own professional territory. He stops by her office, a space where she has always felt in control and authoritative. The symbolism of this location is not lost on either of them. Here, surrounded by medical texts and patient files, Portia cannot hide behind social niceties or avoid difficult conversations. Curtis's presence in her office signals his determination to get answers, regardless of how uncomfortable the discussion becomes. The tension between them is palpable as they navigate the complex emotions surrounding their failed marriage and uncertain future. Despite both Curtis and Portia making efforts to move forward with new romantic partners, unresolved issues continue to create complications in their interactions. Curtis has been building a meaningful connection with his ex-wife Jordan Ashford, rekindling feelings that never truly disappeared. The chemistry between Curtis and Jordan remains undeniable, and many observers believe they belong together. Meanwhile, Portia's relationship with Isaiah Gannon has evolved beyond a simple affair into something more substantial. Though the pregnancy situation threatens to derail any potential future they might have together, These new relationships exist in a state of limbo, unable to fully develop, while the paternity question remains unanswered. Recent preview clips from General Hospital reveal a pivotal moment when Portia tells Curtis that she needs more time before proceeding with the DNA test. This request infuriates Curtis, who has been waiting anxiously for weeks to discover the truth about his potential fatherhood. Her hesitation strikes him as another delaying tactic, reminiscent of her past pattern of withholding crucial information until circumstances force her hand. Curtis struggles to understand why Portia needs additional time when modern paternity testing can provide accurate results quickly and safely. His frustration builds with each passing day, and his patience wears increasingly thin as Portia continues to stall. Curtis's eagerness to resolve the paternity question stems from multiple complex emotions and motivations. On one level, he genuinely hopes he is the father because he yearns for the opportunity to raise a child from birth, an experience stolen from him when Portia hid Trina's paternity for 18 years. The chance to be present for midnight feedings, first steps, first words, and all the precious moments of early childhood represents something sacred to Curtis. He wants to prove himself as a father, to demonstrate the kind of engaged, loving parent he would have been for Trina if given the chance. This baby could offer redemption and healing for wounds that have never properly closed. However, Curtis has also made a confession that reveals the complicated nature of his feelings about this pregnancy. In a moment of brutal honesty, he admitted that while he hopes to be the father, he wishes the child's mother was Jordan rather than Portia. This statement exposes the depth of his emotional disconnection from his wife and his lingering love for the woman who truly understands him. Curtis envisions a life where he and Jordan raise this child together, building the family they once dreamed of creating. The fact that Portia is the mother fills him with conflicting emotions, resentment mixed with hope, obligation tangled with desire for connection to his child. The pressure Curtis may apply to Portia regarding the DNA test could reach a breaking point in the coming episodes. His need to know the truth so he can plan his future with Jordan has become urgent. Every day of delay means another day he cannot fully commit to Jordan or make definitive decisions about his living arrangements. Curtis wants to move forward, whether that means embracing fatherhood and co-parenting with Portia, or closing this chapter and focusing entirely on rebuilding his life with Jordan. The uncertainty is torture, and Curtis's natural inclination toward action and resolution makes Portia's stalling particularly frustrating for him. Portia's reluctance to conduct the paternity test immediately raises troubling questions about her motives and fears. Does she already suspect or even know who the father is? Is she afraid of the results and what they might mean for her future? Perhaps she worries that if Curtis is not the father, she will lose any remaining connection to him and to Trina. Or maybe she fears that if Curtis is the father, she will be bound to him indefinitely despite their broken marriage. The psychological complexity of Portia's position cannot be underestimated, but her pattern of deception makes it difficult for anyone to extend sympathy or understanding toward her current predicament. As this storyline continues to develop, viewers watch with anticipation to see whether Curtis will indeed pressure Portia into taking the DNA test immediately, or whether Portia will continue delaying the inevitable moment of truth. The consequences of the paternity results will ripple through multiple relationships and reshape the futures of everyone involved. Curtis, Jordan, Portia, Isaiah, and even Trina will all be affected by whatever the test reveals. Port Charles residents hold their collective breath, waiting to discover which man will become a father and how this tangled situation will ultimately resolve itself in the dramatic weeks ahead. Next, we will learn about the profound journey of Chad Duell's departure from General Hospital and the deeply personal reasons that led one of daytime television's most recognizable faces to close a chapter that defined nearly 15 years of his life. The end of an era. The year 2025 marked a significant transition in the landscape of General Hospital when Chad Duell, who had inhabited the complex character of Michael Corinthos for almost a decade and a half, made the difficult decision to walk away from Port Charles. This wasn't just another actor leaving a soap opera, it represented the conclusion of a remarkable journey that saw a young performer essentially mature into adulthood under the watchful eyes of millions of devoted viewers. Duell didn't simply play Michael, he lived and breathed the character through countless storylines, emotional arcs, and dramatic turns that shaped not only the fictional world of GH, but also his own personal development as both an actor and a human being. Shortly after Duell's departure sent shockwaves through the General Hospital fanbase, the producers moved swiftly to ensure continuity by casting Rory Gibson in the pivotal role. The transition was handled with the kind of professionalism that long-running soap operas have perfected over decades. Though fans knew that replacing someone who had embodied a character for so long would be no easy task, Gibson stepped into shoes that had been worn and shaped by Duell's unique interpretation, facing the unenviable challenge of making the role his own while honoring the foundation that had been established. Personal growth takes center stage. When Duell publicly addressed his decision to leave the show that had been his professional home for so many years, he chose words that resonated with authenticity and vulnerability, rather than citing creative differences, salary disputes, or the pursuit of other acting opportunities. The typical reasons offered when actors depart long-running series. Duell spoke candidly about something far more fundamental: his need to continue working on his personal growth. This reasoning struck a chord with many who understood that sometimes the most important work we do isn't visible on screen or measurable in traditional metrics of success. The timing of his announcement and the genuine nature of his explanation revealed a man who had reached a crossroads where staying would have meant compromising aspects of himself that couldn't be compromised. After spending such a formative period in one place, doing one thing, the need to explore who he was beyond Michael Corinthos had become not just a want, but a necessity for his continued evolution as a person. Reflections on the Abel Show. In a particularly moving and insightful conversation that took place on YouTube's The Abel Show, a thoughtfully produced series created by a talented team of individuals with disabilities that focuses on meaningful dialogue and authentic human connection, Duell opened up in ways that went beyond the typical promotional interview or surface-level celebrity chat. The atmosphere of the discussion was contemplative and introspective, creating space for Duell to explore themes that aren't often addressed in entertainment media: the passage of time, the weight of growing up in public, and the bittersweet nature of leaving behind something that shaped you fundamentally. During this conversation, Duell didn't spend time rehashing dramatic plot twists from General Hospital or analyzing his character's greatest moments. Instead, he focused his attention on something far more human and relatable: the people who had walked alongside him during this journey and the growth he experienced, not just as an actor, but as a person navigating the complexities of young adulthood under extraordinary circumstances. His reflections painted a picture of a workplace that was more than just a set with cameras and scripts. It was a community that provided stability during years when everything else in life felt uncertain and constantly shifting. Starting young and growing up fast, Duell joined the cast of General Hospital at the age of 22, an age when most people are still figuring out basic life skills and making countless mistakes in relative obscurity. For him, however, this period of discovery and growth happened under studio lights, with millions watching his every move and judging his performance. He spoke candidly about how time seemed to accelerate in ways he never anticipated, with years blending together as he settled into the demanding rhythm of daytime television production. The relentless schedule, the constant need to memorize new material, and the pressure to deliver consistent performances created a unique environment that forced rapid maturation. When the interviewer asked him about his favorite memories from those years, his answer was telling. "It's just those relationships," he said with evident emotion, his voice carrying the weight of genuine appreciation. He elaborated, "I just really grew up there, and that's the most fond memories I have, is the growth I've had as a man there." This wasn't the polished response of someone trying to maintain good relationships in the industry. It was the heartfelt acknowledgement of someone who recognized that the true value of his time on General Hospital couldn't be measured in episodes filmed or storylines completed, but in the personal transformation that occurred behind the scenes. The family that raised him. Duell went on to describe how the cast and crew of General Hospital became more than just colleagues or co-workers. They evolved into the stable constant in a life that was otherwise still, taking shape and finding direction. When you spend more waking hours with a group of people than with your own family, when you share intense creative experiences and navigate professional challenges together year after year, bonds form that transcend typical workplace relationships. These connections provided him with a foundation during a time when he was still learning who he was and who he wanted to become. He characterized his experience at GH less as a traditional job and more as an extended education in life itself, a place where he learned how to be an adult in real time, making mistakes and growing from them while also delivering professional-level work 5 days a week. The hours were undeniably long, often stretching into exhausting marathons of filming that tested physical and mental endurance. The pace was absolutely relentless, with scripts to learn, scenes to shoot, and a production schedule that never slowed down regardless of personal circumstances or energy levels. But within that demanding structure, there was also stability, the kind that allowed him to build skills, develop discipline, and mature into the person he is today. His gratitude throughout this discussion was palpable and genuine, never feeling forced or obligatory. It was the appreciation of someone who understood that they had been given something rare, a place that allowed him to mature at his own pace without rushing him out the door prematurely or discarding him when he made inevitable mistakes. My favorite memories in general, there are the people. The cast, a lot of times, just hanging around with them all the time, he shared, his words painting a picture of downtime between scenes, shared meals in the commissary, inside jokes that developed over years, and the kind of camaraderie that can only come from shared experience and mutual respect. The weight of pressure and loss. When Duell revisited the specific reasons that led to his decision to step away from General Hospital, his explanation remained consistent with what he had shared previously, but the additional context provided depth to understanding his choice. "I'm blessed to be part of that show for as long as I have," he stated with clear sincerity, acknowledging the privilege and opportunity that his time on GH represented. However, he followed this acknowledgement with an honest admission about the burnout that inevitably comes from staying in one creative lane for an extended period, doing essentially the same type of work day after day, year after year. The creative fatigue wasn't the only factor, though. Personal grief played a significant and unavoidable role in his decision-making process. The loss of his father fundamentally changed everything for Duell, forcing him to confront mortality, legacy, and what truly mattered in life. After experiencing such a profound loss, the idea of simply pushing through his daily routine as if nothing catastrophic had happened stopped being a viable option. The grief demanded processing, reflection, and ultimately action, a recognition that life is too short to continue down a path that no longer serves your growth or honors your authentic needs. Duell was remarkably open about the immense pressure that came with stepping into Michael's role originally, especially given that he was replacing another actor and knew from day one that he would be scrutinized, compared, and judged by fans who had their own established connection to the character. "I sweated through 2 shirts," he recalled with a mix of humor and genuine vulnerability when describing his first day on set after taking over the role from Drew Garrett. That particular memory revealed the human reality behind the polished performances viewers saw on screen: the anxiety, the self-doubt, and the desperate desire to prove himself worthy of the opportunity. The anxiety that shaped him, that initial anxiety about living up to expectations and proving himself capable, never fully disappeared throughout his tenure on the show. It evolved and transformed over time, but elements of it remained, creating a persistent undercurrent of pressure that influenced how he approached his work and carried himself professionally. However, rather than being purely destructive, that anxiety also shaped him in productive ways. It kept him sharp, motivated him to continuously improve his craft, and prevented complacency from settling in even after years of playing the same character. The most emotionally challenging and professionally demanding work of his entire run came relatively early in his tenure, including Michael's prison rape storyline, a controversial and groundbreaking arc that Duell described as emotionally exhausting and historically significant for daytime television. Taking on such heavy material at a young age, when he was still developing as both an actor and a person, required courage and vulnerability. The storyline broke new ground in how soap operas address trauma and sexual assault, particularly involving male victims. And Duell's commitment to treating the subject matter with the gravity and respect it deserved earned him critical acclaim and deeper respect from his colleagues. A foundation for the future. Looking back on his entire experience, Duell expressed genuine happiness about having had the foundation that General Hospital provided, recognizing that it allowed him to reach a version of himself that he couldn't have reached through any other path. The show gave him not just acting experience and professional credentials, but life skills, emotional intelligence, and a support system that helped him navigate the challenging transition from youth to adulthood. Every difficult scene, every long shooting day, every challenging storyline contributed to building the person he has become. His decision to leave didn't erase any of that value or diminish what he gained from those 15 years. If anything, choosing to step away when he did actually confirm the growth he experienced at GH. It demonstrated that he had developed enough self-awareness and confidence to recognize when it was time for a new chapter, even when that meant walking away from security and familiarity. The foundation remains solid beneath him, and whatever comes next in his career and life will be built upon everything he learned and experienced during his time in Port Charles.